Welcome back to the HobbyKing KK2 checklist video series. Part 3, KK2 testing. Now we are ready to do some initial KK2 configuration. Leave the wires between the ESC and motors disconnected. Instead of putting on your props, put some pieces of tape on each motor. Turn on your transmitter and connect the battery so we get power to the KK2. This powers the ESCs and the ESCs power the KK2. This brings you to the main menu. The board starts in safe mode. We'll use the 4 buttons at the bottom to navigate between different submenus and settings and then come back to the main menu. Navigate down to the sensor test and select it to perform the test. All the gyros and accelerometers should say OK or you have an issue. When done, go back to the menu. Navigate up to the receiver test and select it to perform the test. For this test, we'll work on the transmitter and just watch the LCD screen for a response. First, check the movement of each control. On your transmitter, move each control stick from the maximum position in both directions. For example, let's move the aileron stick left. It should show left next to the aileron, and vice versa. Test each control: ailerons, elevator, throttle, rudder, and auxiliary. If you see it's going in the wrong direction, for example, the aileron goes right when you push it left, then you have to reverse the channel on your transmitter. Next, center the trims on your radio. Then, if your radio has subtrims, go into the subtrim settings. Move the subtrim for each control until the number on the LCD screen on the KK2 reads 0. Notice how my rudder isn't on 0. I'll adjust my subtrim until it gets to 0. If you're going away from 0, you're moving in the wrong direction on the subtrim. Note, if your radio doesn't have subtrims, just use your regular trims. When done, go back to the menu. Navigate down to the load motor layout and select it. This is where you select the motor configuration. For a quad like my RC timer quad, I will select the quadrocopter X mode. When done, go back to the menu. Navigate up to the Show Motor Layout. This is where you can see a graphic of where the motors are located and the directions of each. Note, you can click the Next button to see each motor individually. Make a note of this. We'll use this in a future step. When done, go back to the menu. Next, we're going to do ESC calibration. Unplug the battery on your multi-rotor. Make sure your props aren't installed. Connect the ESC wires to the motors. On your transmitter, set the throttle to max. Turn on your transmitter, plug in the battery on your multi-rotor, and quickly push and hold the 2 outside buttons of the KK2. If you have a helper, have them hold in the buttons when you plug in the battery. If you can't push these in quickly enough, use a spring clothespin on each before you plug it in. Keeping those 2 buttons pressed in, listen for the ESC full throttle calibration sound. On the transmitter, bring the throttle back to 0. Listen for the ESC sound to indicate idle throttle. Let go of the 2 buttons. The ESCs are now calibrated. Next, we'll test each motor and make sure each one runs in the correct direction. For one of the motors, connect the ESC wires to the safe motor. We're going to test one motor at a time, so you can disconnect all the ESC wires except for one motor. Make sure you are in the main screen and it says Safe. Hold down the quad so it doesn't move. Push the rudder stick to the lower right to arm the quad. Notice it says Armed. Check that the motor runs in the direction that we noted earlier. With the motor running, try moving its arm up and down. You should notice that the motor speed increases when the motor drops and decreases when the motor rises. This is a self-leveling feature. The default settings will have some self-leveling turned on already. Spin up each motor and listen to it carefully. Listen for differences between the motors. Listen for loud or odd noises which could indicate vibration. If you suspect vibration, put a zip tie on the motor. Test it again and rotate it 90 degrees until the vibration sounds less. Check out my video where I diagnose a motor noise. Disarm the quad by holding the rudder stick to the lower left. Notice it says Safe. Get into the habit of disarming the quad before approaching it. Recognize the beeping sound as a warning sound that the propellers could start up with the throttle. Disconnect the motor and repeat the process for the 3 other motors. Connect all 4 motors now. This concludes this part of the video series. Click this link to automatically advance to the next part of the video series. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to get reminders for future videos.